The following presentation is a production of Ride the Wave Media.
We are those guys. We hope to be your guys, bringing the latest from the National Football League. Nick, it's not just Canton. It's not just the Hall of Fame game. We've got actual preseason games in progress as we speak. Football is back and better than ever. And so for our former 10-year NFL safety, former defensive back, we did give a shout out to the CFL last week as well.
Right.
Nick Ferguson, what's going on, my man?
Nothing much, man. Glad to be back with you.
Well, I'm excited. In the business, they call this a tease. We're going to be having our first guest here on Those Guys, but we're keeping it within the Ride the Wave family. We'll hear from our friend and close compadre here at Ride the Wave when we talk about his football team. Expect to see more of that, but I wanted to start with the biggest rumor around the National Football League. We're now at the end of the week, but on Monday, this in early August, the San Francisco 49ers were reportedly working on a trade to get former All-Pro, Pro Bowl wide receiver Brandon Aiyuk, who starred for them in the postseason, led the team in receptions, receiving yards, and touchdowns this past season. And we seem to be at a bit of an impasse. So I'll quickly kind of gloss over what Matt Mayoko of NBC Sports Bay Area had mentioned on Monday, that they had the San Francisco 49ers worked with both the Cleveland Browns and the New England Patriots. However, Aiyuk couldn't come to terms with the contract extension, i.e. the 49ers wanted him gone and were leaking out that they were trying to get him out of there. However, we circle back Wednesday, Diana Rossini of The Athletic reporting that, well, see, those other teams, they couldn't get a deal done, so now the Pittsburgh Steelers emerge as a landing spot, maybe the preferred destination of one Brandon Aiyuk, but now the 49ers and the Steelers can't necessarily come to terms with a deal. Kyle Shanahan, yes.
Hold on for a second, Alex.
Okay, yes.
Hold
on. Okay.
Let me call you right back. All right, yeah. So that was my former teammate GM John Lynch.
Oh, John Lynch on the line. Let's go. That's not even the tease I was going for.
Yeah. I mean, speaking of this whole Brandon Aiyuk stuff, not to cut you off.
No, you should have. I'm glad you did.
But the whole idea is when you look at the Brandon Aiyuk situation, and you're right, teams find a very unique way to leak out information as it pertains to a player, because what it does to the fan base, like, no, listen, they wanted him here, but he didn't want to be here, right? It was all about money for him. It wasn't about bang, bang, Niner game, right? It was about how much money can I put in my pocket? But when we really think about this situation for what it's worth, I think it's best for Brandon Aiyuk to get out of San Francisco.
I agree.
Here's why really quickly.
Yeah, please.
The cost of living is really high. So no matter how much money they pay you, it's still not going to be equivalent to what maybe Stephon Diggs or maybe Tyreek Hill is making in Miami or Houston. It's not. Mm-hmm. And has the San Francisco 49ers reached their limit, right? Are they a team that just kind of come on at the end, get to the Super Bowl, and never get over the hump? This is something he's got to really think about. And then when you think about the Steelers, look, dude, I hope they work that out, because that would be a nice place for him, because you got Roman Wilson, you have Van Jefferson, and you got George Pickens. I mean, Brandon Aiyuk goes in right away, and he's wide receiver number one.
Yes. Yeah, without a doubt. We're going to get to those Pittsburgh Steelers shortly here. What I think is fascinating is the philosophical decision, right? We're trying to separate it's the chicken or the egg here, because Brandon Aiyuk, led the Niners in all, receiving categories. But the fact of the matter is, with all this money being handed out, and we've talked about CeeDee Lamb, we've talked about T. Higgins and Jamar Chase, other guys waiting for those brand new contracts. Why, is it Kyle Shanahan that just will not allocate $30 million for a guy who leads the team in receiving, but because of his offense, that's only 75 catches. We're trying to put him on par with Justin Jefferson, who's averaging 110, 115 catches, being the focal point of that offense, where Christian McCaffrey is making less money than Deebo Samuel. Like, they've coveted positions and they've paid those guys, i.e. Nick Bosa, McCaffrey, and soon to be Brock Purdy, I'm sure. But this is happening because the 49ers' identity and their offense is to not allocate all those funds to one receiver. This is just business as far as the Niners are concerned, right, Nick?
Well, yeah, it's business as usual. Like, there's a difference between football business and the business of football. They sound the same, but they're rearranged in different orders, which hits, I guess, put emphasis on the specialty itself, which is the business aspect. I mean, the San Francisco 49ers, they've done well for themselves as far as level of production, but also that means as though escalating prices for the players on your roster.
Correct.
You mentioned it. I mean, they haven't even given Brock Purdy a deal, and I don't even know why Brock Purdy is really being silent in this particular situation, because if I'm him or I'm anyone in his camp, I'm like, look, I was Mr. Irrelevant. I have done more than prove myself. Going back to the game when he lost against the Philadelphia Eagles, I didn't play in that game and we lost, right? Showing his value. So if I'm Purdy, I want my money too, but this is the cost of doing business. You do well, you have to pay well, but at the same time, you can't keep everyone. So I think it's smart for both Kyle and John to realize they're not going to get this deal done with Brandon Aiyuk. Find the best suitor and just send him off. But they realize that there's value in Brandon Aiyuk, even if we don't want to openly admit it as in the form of payment. There's value. Trade him now, get draft picks, make your team better, because guess what? You're not going to be able to keep Kittle, Deebo Samuels, Purdy, and Bosa all happy financially. That's how this works.
Yeah, I'm going to put a pin in that, and maybe because I think this trade is going to drag out, I'd like to bring that up, because for a team competing for a Super Bowl, draft picks would have been great 2 months ago, or 3-4 months ago ahead of the draft. But if you were in the Super Bowl last year and want to be back, 2025 picks aren't going to help me. But on the other side of things, you mentioned the Pittsburgh Steelers and what the offense would look like with Brandon Aiyuk. So I think it'd be a great exercise as we continue our NFL training camp previews. The Pittsburgh Steelers are up, and because of that, we have to bring in for some unique perspective, because, listen, we can talk ball, we have our teams, but nobody reps the Steelers like our own Just Blane on part of the Ride the Wave media. He is Ride the Wave media. I mean, my guy, Blane, Nick, and I go back over a decade, one of my closest friends in the business and someone who I'm thrilled to have join us, and more importantly, to talk about his Pittsburgh Steelers. Just Blane, what's happening, my man? Welcome to the show.
1 sec, bro. 1 sec.
Oh, you're going to big time me too, like you're Nick Ferguson.
Oh, I caught that. No, man, I'm just finishing up my NCAA 25, my game, man. I got a season going here. I created a character named Bo Whitley. You know who Bo Whitley is. The quarterback from Minnesota State Screaming Eagles, baby, from Coach.
There you go. I can name you the coaching staff. I can give you Luther Van Dam. I cannot give you Bo Whitley. I can give you Stewart the mascot, but I can't give you Bo Whitley.
You can't forget him, dude. And let me just, I am the CEO of this network. You guys had John Lynch on the line, and you let him go for me? Come on.
Well. In all fairness, no, it wasn't John. I just pretended as though it was John because we were talking about San Francisco. But if you want me to call him, I can call him.
He is
No,
Nick
no, no.
Ferguson.
We better not do that on the line right here because that could get crazy.
He's leveraging his 10 years in the NFL. That is his guy. They shared the backfield together, one playing center field and one being Nick Ferguson. Let's talk about your Pittsburgh Steelers, Blane. Now, I know this Brandon Aiyuk stuff is kind of hanging in the breeze, so we're not going to spend too much time on this. But here's the reality. Mike Tomlin is now entering year 17 as the head coach of the year 18. Good Lord, time is flying by. Year 18 as head coach of the Pittsburgh Steelers. And, despite with how 2023 went, playing 3 different quarterbacks, your former first-round pick in Kenny Pickett totally flaming out, well, what do you know? They still finish with an incredible, impressive record, all things considered, 10-7, which was good for 3rd in the division. They showed up for a postseason game, and they said goodbye very quickly. But we come in now with wholesale changes all across for this football team. I think before we dive into it, from your perspective, Blane, kind of last year coming into this year, let's do a vibe check. Like, how are you feeling about them boys? And really kind of what would you kind of like to learn when you spend time with myself and Nick?
Man, my Steelers, they're going to be better than ever this year, I think, because here's the thing. Last year, you asked even the Steeler fan base to name 3 players. You can't do it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it was just a bunch of dudes out there who came together under Mike Tomlin and had a winning season. Alex, you know me for a long time, and I used to not watch the Steelers until the playoffs because it was guaranteed they're going every year. And I love my Steelers, but I didn't have to watch them because I knew they were playing in late the year and it meant something.
Mm-hmm.
I don't see that changing this year. Like, it's Mike Tomlin has got something magic that can't be replicated. What I want to learn from you guys, man, I don't know, man. You guys know way more in-depth stuff of who got drafted and all that kind of stuff. And I know a couple of the draft picks, like Roman Wilson. I think I even texted you and Ferg about that one. I mentioned that when
national champion. Yeah,
I was excited about that one. Russell Wilson. I mean, you got the Wilson brothers there. I mean, are they brothers?
No.
Okay.
Is that where you want to start? Because Nick, obviously, you followed Russell Wilson last year as a member of the Denver Broncos.
Yeah.
Let's open things up because you have been a staunch defender of Russell Wilson, the player, obviously clashing with Sean Payton and how things ended in Denver. So maybe if you can help bring this full circle, we know that Russell Wilson is there in Pittsburgh. They're paying him the league minimum while Sean Payton and the Broncos are holding the bag. But let's talk about, from an offense, why it didn't fit in Denver, and if you're optimistic for the fit in Pittsburgh.
Well, the reason why it didn't fit is because, first of all, you have to look at Russell's skill set. And automatically, it didn't fit anything that Sean Payton has ever done in any of the offenses, whether it's with New Orleans, the Giants, or even the Dallas Cowboys. You had a guy who wasn't your typical pocket passer. He was a guy that loves to escape to either his right or his left, and that means that he would lose ground to gain ground. And a lot of coordinators like Sean Payton, they want guys to stay on schedule. They want them, if it's a five-step drop, pressure in your face. I know it's coming. You know it's coming. I still want you to throw the dig route and get smacked in the face. Russell is not that guy. He's been the same guy, with the Broncos as though he was when he was in high school. If he's flushed any direction, right or left, he is getting outside the pocket because now he knows he has more space, more room. So for that matter, that's why I didn't get it. It just didn't gel. I mean, there are a couple more things, but we don't have time for that. But here's why I like the situation in Pittsburgh. Blane said it himself. Like, he could tune out the Pittsburgh Steelers for the first half of the season and only tune back in the playoffs. You know why? There was a culture that they have. Going back to Chuck Noll, right? Going back to the Chin himself, and then getting to Mike Tomlin.
Coach Cowher.
Right? Coach Cowher. So there's a culture. You run the ball, you have decent quarterback play, and you play great defense. That's been a recipe for the Pittsburgh Steelers, and that's the reason they have had 3 head coaches in their franchise history, which is crazy. But now they feel as though we have a quarterback now and our quarterback of the future. And the reason I say that, you look at Russell and you look at Justin. Both of these guys have been cast off by Seattle, Denver, Chicago, but they possess the same skill set, right? It's like having a Mustang. You have a 2024 Mustang, and then you have a 1976 Shelby GT, right? Same car, right? They just look a little different, but they do the same thing. That's what Pittsburgh Steelers fans are going to get between Justin and Russell. And if Russell, for some reason, is struggling, you go to Justin. Both of those guys have something they want to prove. And Mike Tomlin has proven that, guess what? We'll take in those types of players and coaches. Remember Brian Flores? No one wanted to hire him after the Miami situation. Where did he go? He went to Pittsburgh.
Mm-hmm.
Why? Because of the Roonies and because of Mike Tomlin. They have something special. And it's one of the reasons when I grew up in Miami, I wasn't a Dolphin fan originally. Guess what? I was a Steelers fan, right? I wanted to change my name to Franco Harris.
Yeah.
No, you can't do that.
Hey, man, I was a huge Jerome Bettis, the bus. I was a huge fan of his. Like I've been a fan. I'm 40. 35 years is what I can say I've been a Steelers fan. It's a culture. It feels like it's fun. It's good. And you said it right though. They take in. Mike Tomlin will take in anybody. I think Mike Tomlin's got a chip on his own shoulder.
Mm-hmm.
He uses that to his advantage. He always has. He's got that stone face on. Looks menacing. He'll bring people in. He does. You know who it reminds me of, Alex? Doc Winter. Doc Winter has the same demeanor almost around them. But it's something that when they walk into a room, and I've never been in a room with Mike, Doc Winter is the PD for iHeart. He's big in the hip hop world. But when they walk in a room, it's them. That's all that's there. You know, like everybody goes to that. They attract to that. And I think it's such a positive way. It's almost like there's the opposite side. I don't want to knock Ryan McBain's Raiders, but the Raiders had this, they'll take anybody in there, all the criminals and all this. I think there was another culture that the Steelers had with it. It was like, yeah, we'll take you in, but you better act right or something. I don't know. There was something different about it. It's gonna be exciting. Go ahead, Alex. I thought you had something there.
Well, no, I was going to start with Russ, but your description of what Mike Tomlin does is apt. I mean, consuming, being a part of the media, consuming enough, like news clippings and podcasts and all that, you get the same response from anybody that's a player, coach, former player, coach in the media. When Mike Tomlin enters the room, there's like a different air about things, and he's not going to say anything. Hey guys, how are you doing? He stands there and he looks, and it's stoic. Like, what's he thinking about? What's on his mind? Like, just everybody fascinated with Mike Tomlin, the person, and largely built off the success that he had. And I want to get back to the team and the Russell and Justin Fields dynamic. We're seeing that play out where Justin Fields has been practicing with Russell dealing with a calf injury. So you're getting those reps that Justin Fields needs. I'm not saying that Russell Wilson doesn't need them, because we've got a brand new offense for him, for Pittsburgh as a whole. A lot more changes than we've come to expect in a typical Steelers offseason. So I think living in both the present and the future, Nick, to your point about the quarterback situation, is something that is playing out right before our eyes. And we'll see. I mean, on a one-year deal and Justin Fields is on an expiring deal, they are both auditioning for their next contracts. And I'd be willing to bet, I don't want to guarantee it, but I'd be willing to bet that one, but definitely not both of those quarterbacks would get a second contract from the Pittsburgh Steelers.
You know what this reminds me of? A movie I saw a couple of years ago. And if you're a comic book fan, you'll get this. It's Future Past, but it's the Pittsburgh Steelers version of Future Past, because Fields can be the future while Russell is the past. And the Pittsburgh Steelers, when you listen to other individuals around national media, they don't really like this combination because they were down on both quarterbacks to begin with last season, right? But to me, this is the perfect situation of your Pittsburgh Steelers, because if neither one of these guys work out, guess what? You're going to get another quarterback in 2025, right? And then if they do work out, guess what? you are still not paying either quarterback the average amount per year that the quarterbacks are making. You're not paying them what Justin Herbert made. You're not paying them what Jordan Love was paid. You're not. So you're still under the cap, but you still have quality play at the quarterback position. So the Pittsburgh Steelers, believe it or not, they are in great position right now.
How is that? How did that go from last year? Like, seriously, I'm like, yeah, Kenny Pickett, okay. But literally, you went from a Hall of Famer to 3 quarterbacks that nobody can name. Mm-hmm. And now you got now they're set up for who knows what, like it's insane. Sorry, go ahead, Alex.
No. I mean, Ben Roethlisberger looming as large as he did. The Green Bay Packers model is the Green Bay Packers model. Any other team could use a first-round pick to get their future quarterback, but the Packers have developed a unique ability to foster and take care of guys and still give them the attention and show them that they're valued. I mean, the Steelers tried. They drafted Kenny Pickett in the first round, but Mason Rudolph was there last year. They drafted Josh Dobbs, who had some shine last year. They've attacked the quarterback position through the draft. But this is really the first time where they've gone out, and again, the investment is $1.5 million for Russell and a 6th-round pick they sent to Chicago for Justin Fields. So it's a different approach and strategy that we're used to with this football team. I think the biggest free agent acquisition they had prior to Russell at this position was Mitchell Trubisky, right? So I think it's just a different dynamic that these are guys that are going to give their best for Mike Tomlin. And if they don't, or they can't because Russell either doesn't have it or Justin Fields never had it as a franchise quarterback, well, then we know because they couldn't thrive in this system. And moving on to the other key additions for this team, because the quarterback's obviously the most significant, especially when we don't have a clear one. But the presence and the power that Mike Tomlin has is being able to pull a key piece of a division rival's defense in Patrick Queen, the big offseason acquisition. Again, I mentioned what little resources they spent at the quarterback position. They can go out, re-sign TJ Watt to reset the pass rusher market. And then they go and get Patrick Queen from the Baltimore Ravens, a 3-year, $41 million deal. They are retooling this defense in a way that if the offense gets on schedule and is less erratic, you let the defense just go do their work. So I don't know if there's an added incentive to pull a great defender off of your division rival in Baltimore, but fit for Patrick Queen on Mike Tomlin and Terrell Austin's defense.
Well, I'll tell you this. Hell yeah, it's great to pull someone off of your rival because that's one less headache you have to deal with offensively. And sometimes it's like Vontaze Burfict, right? It's better to have him on your team than playing against him, even though there's a chance that he may get suspended or fined. I'd rather him be our game wrecker and our savage opposed to being someone else's. But once again, this plays to the history of the Pittsburgh Steelers themselves. They were always tough as hell on defense, and you needed someone in the middle, roaming the middle, commanding, having that green dot on the back of their helmet, getting the communication to run your defense. And they feel as though, you know what? This is not the best team that we've assembled, but it is enough to get us to the finish line where we have an opportunity to get into the mix. And once you get into the tournament, hey man, it's no holds barred from there. I mean, Kansas City won a Super Bowl, not because of Andy Reid, Travis Kelce, or you want to call him, Taylor Swift's boyfriend, whatever you want to refer to him as, but they won it based on defense. That's something that we hadn't seen from Kansas City in the past couple of years. So Pittsburgh is thinking, you know what? Our defense is going to be solid. We're going to run the ball. They added Cortorale Patterson to the mix. He could play wide receiver. He could play the slot. You could throw him in there with Fry, move that tight end. Hell, you could throw him in the backfield and just hand it to him, right? So the idea is, can they protect either Russell or Justin so those quarterbacks can get the ball in the hands of the playmakers and let them work? And if they're able to work out a deal and get Brandon Aiyuk, I'm just going to say, look out.
Man.
Go ahead, Blaine, and then I'll follow up.
On the beast, that's Patrick Queen. I like that. I like this guy. And you're like, why would you not go get a guy that's going to cause you trouble, right? Like that, like Ferg said, like that's absolutely right. And I'll go one step further here and say you had the steel curtain back in the 70s. You had Mean Joe Green. What about Mean Patrick Queen, baby?
Woo,
It's coming. It's coming.
I just, I think of having watched a lot of Steeler games because of Blane, because of my wife and the in-laws, the linebacker play was something that Mike Tomlin, the standard is the standard. They're not doing too many exotic things, right? They run their base 3-4 defense. They can win with 4 pass rushers because of TJ Watt and Alex Highsmith. And
hey, don't forget Haywood in there now.
No, well, I mean, listen, Cam Hayward, I like Cam Hayward up the middle, and their guys are going to win up front. So they don't have to do anything too crazy, but the middle of the field had always been an issue. So improving the linebacker play was huge. And it's just making sure that when their corners are put on an island, they found one last year in the draft, and Joey Porter Jr. Rounding out the rest of that DB room will really catapult this defense, right? Because we're talking about a bottom 5 offense last year, 28th in terms of yardage, but top 10 defensively. So the way that you win 10 games with some of the worst quarterback play, again, fewer passing yards than the New York Giants and the New England Patriots. Again, we're talking about Tommy DeVito and Mac Jones. Steelers were less productive than those guys. So stability on the offense, increasing the floor and level of the defense. This is a team that is vastly improved as far as I'm concerned. And Cortorale Patterson, he was not signed, Nick, with all due respect, because of the lack of depth that they have on the offensive side. They signed Cortorale Patterson hours after the league approved changes for the kickoff rules. Immediately, I think he's got 9 career kickoff return TDs with this brand new rule that's going in, that's novel, that's supposed to bring the kickoff rule back. There's a reason he sat on his couch, and the first phone call he gets a job as soon as these rule changes are in. So they've been aggressive, attacking, and being smart about a significant rule change that as fans, we have no idea what to expect. We saw some third stringers do it in the preseason, but Mike Tomlin, and kudos to Omar Khan and that front office for understanding just wholesale changes to the roster, but also with the NFL rulebook. So attacking it with one of the best kick returners of all time is that's an easy check mark in my book. So, yes.
Wasn't Tomlin one of the first ones to just stop kicking the extra point, and he wanted to start going for 2? He wanted.
That sounds about right. That was an Arthur Smith thing too, funny enough, when he was the head coach of the Falcons. Arthur Smith did that a lot, and Arthur Smith now replacing Matt Canada as the offensive coordinator. I don't need to circle back too much to it, but for how weird that Falcons team was, we're not expecting like Pat Freiermuth to be throwing touchdowns to Darnell Washington, Nick, are we? Like, I don't know if we need to set the record straight on what he is as a play caller. I just think it's fascinating that the Steelers, have an offensive play caller that hopefully, fingers crossed, won't call the jet sweep as much as Matt Canada did. And at the same time, is looking for short to intermediate throws over the middle of the field with, of all people, Russell Wilson.
Well, I'll say this. No, he's not. Yes, Canada. That's kind of a play from Duke Kaboom. Keanu Reeves' character from the little kids movie. But listen,
shout out 3 of us being dads.
Here's what I will say. See, don't underestimate Arthur Smith, because some of the plays that he ran in Atlanta, maybe they were not successful because they were not highly executed, right?
Mm-hmm.
Once again, just think about what the Steelers really have and think with a creative mind. So there's a possibility you can get Russell, Justin, and Cortorale Patterson on the field at the same time. So defensively, that's a nightmare because you're saying, okay, well, who do we take away? How do we take it away? Russell's going to scramble. You can throw it to Fields. He can run it and he can throw it. And Cortorale Patterson, when you throw it to him, he's running through guys. So I'm looking for the creativity from Arthur Smith. And for me, I'm like, in the preseason, you try all of that. Even if it fails, you know why, guys? Because the teams you face every single week, guess what? They got to practice for those plays, even if you never run them. And now they have so much talent on the offensive side of the ball, but it's on Arthur Smith to bring it together.
That's amazing. That's a great point. Like the fact that 3 elite players, I mean, I'm going to hype them up. These are my boys.
Hype them up.
We them boys.
Elite players on the other side of the ball. On the other side, the defense side, you've got to find 3 elite players to cover those guys. That's dangerous. Ferg, you're hyping me up even more for my own team.
Blane, let's get the hype train going. Let me give you one more thing.
All right.
As a defensive coach and a defensive player, you know what one of the hardest things to do is to tackle in space. And keep this in mind, that with the new rules changes, the hip drop tackle, you can't do it anymore. You can't do it anymore. So you want to put the defensive guys on their heels, and if they do the hip drop tackle, guess what? First down. Give them to me, right? I'm just saying, Blane, I'm just going to put it out there.
Hey, man, I'm going to be over here yelling like Rodney Harrison we used to work with. He would say, my Steelers. Anytime a team was winning, he would say, my Steelers, my.
Yeah.
Oh, Rodney, you. I love him.
He was a legend on Sunday night for that.
Yeah.
We're talking about key pieces to the Steelers offense now. You know, the hub where things are moving, right? The run game with Najee Harris and Jalen Warren, who I'm so ecstatic for. But it's at the same time cycling out different pieces, right? The offseason kind of kicked off prior to the draft with this big Deontay Johnson trade, sending him to Carolina. I mean, talk about from the penthouse to the outhouse with no disrespect, no strays for Dave Canales and crew. But Blane, I mean, this Deontay Johnson experience, right? He was the number 1 receiver. They'd have their shots every once in a while for George Pickens. But as a Steeler fan, do you remember the Deontay Johnson experience and kind of like what it's like getting off that ride after the last few years for a guy that was thrown at a lot? He went a whole year without catching a single touchdown. And it's like every other play, he's either dropping a pass or his knee bends over backwards. You think his season is done, and he just like trots back out on the field 3 years later. Like I'm just fascinated to see like how this offense looks with a key piece like that, kind of being moved on for, in essence, cornerback depth and a 7th round pick.
All I'm gonna say is he's exhausting to watch. That's it. It's exhausting. You never know. It's almost like, who's our guy we watch? Jeff Green for the Celtics.
We've been talking about Jeff Green for a decade.
Me and Alex have figured out that there's this cycle of Jeff Green, and every 11 months and 3 days or something, he'll go out for like 45 points. Yeah. But other than that, nothing. I feel like the same. You watch the same type of thing. This is the NFL example of the Jeff Green effect. We're gonna trademark that because I think we really got something there, Alex.
I mean, we got some runway with still. He's in the NBA. He was an NBA champion with your Denver Nuggets, Nick. But it just seemed like he was the focal point of the offense for so much of the time. Yeah. But yeah, you'd be holding your breath. He's either going to pop off for 6 catches, 110 yards, or like he just
get a couple personal pit fouls and like lose your yards. Like you never know. Like that's it.
We go from that to how they addressed other areas of the offense in the draft. We'll quickly go through the emphasis on the offensive line. Their 2 top picks, Troy Fautanu from Washington, who looks like he's going to start out at right tackle, and then Zach Frazier out of West Virginia, who, by the way, has a beard larger than yours, Blane.
Oh,
and
man.
By the way, his hobbies outside of football include woodworking. He built a log cabin out there in the sticks in West Virginia. I think Zach Frazier is about to be your favorite player, and it's not just because within 2 years, I mean, I'm including the addition of Broderick Jones in the first round last year. In 2 years, the Steelers have taken what was once one of the worst offensive lines and could make it one of the strengths of their offense. So, Nick, again, we talk about Russell Wilson or Justin Fields, likely Russell Wilson. Here we go. If I just say Justin Wilson, I'm never wrong.
Yeah.
Just say Justin Wilson.
Justin Wilson. So the offensive line additions, Blane, you're hyped about Roman Wilson. Like, how does that affect the two running backs that were both incredibly effective last year and kind of the identity of this team overall?
Well, look at where Arthur Smith has been in previous years, right? He was in Tennessee when you had Derrick Henry there, Bijan Robinson in Atlanta. Once again, he could not run the full gamut of his offense because he had a quarterback that was so up and down. Now, when you kind of revamp your offensive line and you stick to what the Steelers do best, but more importantly, you understand what your quarterbacks do and do best, that's getting them outside the pocket. This is something that Sean Payton did not do well here for the Denver Broncos with Russell, or the combination, or vice versa, if you want to call it that way. The thing is, for Arthur Smith, he needs to get both of those quarterbacks outside the pocket. The reason I say that, it puts stress on the defense. That middle linebacker, he's got a long way to run. And what you do is like a moth to a flame. You draw in the defense so you can throw the ball all over the yard. This is what you do. This is why, like, when you have a thoroughbred horse, you just can't keep him in the barn. No. You're not using that horse the right way. That horse was bred to run. And these quarterbacks were bred to get on the outside, use their leg and their arms and make plays. So don't put them in the box and say, you know what? I want you to be Ben Roethlisberger. Hell, they're not Ben Roethlisberger. And I mean, in the past couple of years for Ben Roethlisberger before he retired, even he wasn't Ben Roethlisberger of old. So the idea is let these dudes be dudes and start pulling guards, getting them on the perimeter. Because I can tell you, man, it's hard as hell as a defender to keep your eyes on your luggage for 24 seconds, let alone 5.
Wow. I'll round it out. Just real funny. I think it's so funny how the NFL works with the familiarity and the relationships that ones build. So I want to focus on Troy Fautanu, right? The 20th overall selection, the lineman out of Washington. The first chance the Steelers get to look at him is the Washington Pro Day, because who's out there leading the drills for all the offensive linemen at Washington's Pro Day? Steelers offensive line coach Pat Meyer. So they got an up close and in-depth look at Fautanu, who was a capable pass blocker, but an absolute mauler in the run game. As far as like the athletics test out, a guy that when those quarterbacks or the running backs get out in space, here's a guy that was pulling or often leading the charge, getting to the second level. So it's going to be such an interesting way to see what Arthur Smith does to not only put his quarterbacks and running backs in the right situations, but how do I scheme the blocking so that all of a sudden somebody even smaller, than a defensive lineman, let's say a safety, Nick, here you are coming off the edge, it's a run, and all of a sudden you just see Troy Fautanu or another 6'5", 300-pound tackle just coming right towards you. Like, it's unstoppable.
No, it is, considering the fact that the league changed the rules where you can no longer cut those guys. So I know the league talks the league always talks about, hey, man, we're trying to protect the health of our players. You just put a 200-pound DB and face him up against a 290-pound guy with good feet, and he's pulling, and I can't really cut him. So all it is guess what? It's a nightmare play for the DB. And all I would have to say is Fautanu, all he has to do, look at the opponent defensive side and say, somebody come get him because he's got a concussion.
That's wild. Now, I don't know if this is official, if they've got the biggest, offensive line, but there's nobody on that offensive line smaller than 6'3", 305 pounds.
Yeah. It's them. Right? It's them and the Rams. We did this during our Rams preview, which you can find on those guys. The Rams added 3 free agent offensive linemen that combined for nearly 1,000 pounds. So you can see, again, if you as the Pittsburgh Steelers are on the same page as Sean McVay and those Rams, I think you're onto something, right? Mm-hmm. Those are the two teams that put an emphasis on the interior of their offensive line, improved. Again, They were league average as an offensive line, maybe bottom third, but now they're taking what was something they were lacking in and turning it hopefully into a strength. And at least, as we live in the present and the future, build off of elite blue chip prospects that they use first round selections for. So we're going to, Blane, be prepared. We're going to ask you the floor and the ceiling of this team, but what really swings on how well this team can perform is what happens that second half of the season. Now, I'm not a big conspiracy theory guy, unless when I am, but the fact of the matter is the hardest schedule in football belongs to the Pittsburgh Steelers. And, well, why is that? As it turns out, when they come out after their Week 9 bye, Week 10, Week 11 through the end of the season, they are home against Baltimore, on the road at Cleveland, at Cincinnati, home against the Browns. Then they go at Philadelphia, at Baltimore again, home on Christmas Day against the two-time Super Bowl defending champion Chiefs, and they close things out at home against the Bengals, right? So you've got, you're good. I'm on a roll here. You've got 6 division games and two-time Super Bowl champions and the Eagles that played in the Super Bowl 2 years before that. Now, all of a sudden, we learn the NFL is putting out the Hard Knocks in-season edition, profiling the AFC North. So not only is the Steelers' schedule backloaded, it is backloaded because the NFL wants to film these games and make a documentary about it. So your thoughts, Blane, knowing that the NFL is putting the Steelers in a chokehold with how this season finishes.
So this is my prediction? This is my low and high, or is that what we're doing?
Yeah, that's fine. Just knowing how tough that end of the season is, what is the floor of this Pittsburgh Steelers team? Are they – hey, Mike Tomlin, is he going to keep that winning streak intact?
Absolutely. 500 is the bare minimum. Yep. 500. That's – what is that, 8-8? Or
well, it would be 9-8 now. He's 9-8. 9-8.
9-8, 17 games. The top of that? Oh, man, I think not thinking about injuries and all that kind of stuff that can happen. If you're just looking at it, Steelers are going to be playoff bye round, first round bye.
Okay. Ooh, so yeah. Division winners, unseating those Ravens. I love to hear it. Let me throw you the wild card player that's gonna get some wins. It's Chris Boswell, a kicker. Yeah, the Boz. Dude.
The Boz is good, and I feel like that right there, it could put him across the line, man. Put your money on Boz.
That's what it is. He's money from about 50 plus typically. Nick Ferguson, your turn. You got a floor for the Pittsburgh Steelers and their ceiling, knowing how bad that second half of the schedule is.
Well, I was kind of piggyback off of what Blane said, so I'll put them at 500 because with Mike Tomlin, this team hasn't really missed the postseason. Right? They haven't really made it to the end of the Super Bowl, but they've been really good as far as getting to the postseason. Just think about it. You had Kenny Pickett, Mason Rudolph, and Mitchell Trubisky, and they still got that done, right?
Yep.
So if you're believing that either Justin Fields or Russell Wilson can help them, yes, that is the floor. Now, the ceiling, I have to kind of go a little away from Blane because getting a bye, knowing as though they only give out 1 buys now, right? That means you're not only winning your division, but you're the tops in the league. I think that's going to be really hard to do in that division, which is a black and blue division. But I do give the Steelers a fighting chance or getting maybe the 5th or 6th seed, and they get in the playoffs and they make noise. But obviously they don't get to the Super Bowl, but they make it interesting.
He's Nick Ferguson. He's Just Blane, CEO here of Ride the Wave Media. You can find him Radio Daybreak as well as Game Related. Saw him holding the sticks when we were getting started here. So we like to end every show with Nick before we split, but he's the man of the hour. He's our guest. Blane, before we split, I got to put you on the spot here. What can we look forward to with the latest episodes of Radio Daybreak as well as maybe Game Related comeback? We'll see you playing some college football maybe?
Oh yeah, Game Related's coming back. Radio Daybreak is booming right here. That's our local podcast that's actually going national now. We'll be out. We're hosting a red carpet event for a organization called Promise to Live, suicide prevention. We'll be out there in Hollywood. That's Radio Daybreak. What else, man? I I got another project coming out with Courtney Pearl, our resident Celtic priestess. We are doing movie watches where we picked certain movies and horror movies, witch movies is what we're going for. So this is something we've taped one, we've recorded one episode, and we did Wicker Man and Midsummer. So we're doing all these like comparisons. That's a really fun project that's coming along. All kinds of stuff in the works, man. We got a Lego event coming up. Radio Daybreak will be a part of here 2 weeks from now. So it's booming, man. It's booming.
Man, just make sure you wear. I know you like to lay like those feet to breathe, but by all means, man, closed-toed shoes. There's no bigger pain than a Lego on the bottom of the foot.
Right?
I swear, like having my son now, like that is the pain, like the pain of not only not putting the toys away properly, but like getting that on the bottom of my foot. I wouldn't wish that on my own worst enemy. I really wouldn't.
Oh, that's awful.
We got none of those around here, though. Just Blane, can't thank you enough for joining us.
More. Let me drop one more prediction about the Steelers.
Oh, let's go.
Week two, Rusty Wilson is going to go into Denver.
Uh-oh.
This is what I'm going to say. Right, he's going to throw 5 bombs in there. 5 TDs.
Okay, see, Blane. See, my wife would say that I listen, but I don't listen to her all the time, and that's kind of true. But in this case, I'm listening to you, and what I heard 5 bombs, but you didn't say who was catching. You didn't say who's catching.
That's true.
There he is, Nick Ferguson, showing his allegiance to his Denver Broncos, despite how much you just heard him pump up Russell Wilson.
Rusty's going to be in there saying, "Acknowledge me," like our tribal chief Roman Reigns. This is what he'll have on under his jersey.
Mr. Unlimited. The fun is unlimited here. You can always catch us, Ride the Wave Media, those guys, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, if you want to see Blane on the stream. Again, can't thank you enough for helping us kick off our first guest that we've had here to predict. It's good to get our perspective, but even better to get someone closer to the team than the two of us. So, Nick, Blane, a pleasure. We'll have to have you back on again, especially come September 16th, the day after those Pittsburgh Steelers come into Denver and do what?
5 touchdowns, baby. 5 bombs. I didn't say who to.
Peace.